16 hours into a double shift, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from fatigue, though God knows I was running on fumes and the dregs of break room coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. My body had that hollow feeling, the kind that settles in after too many trauma calls and not enough sleep. I stripped off my paramedic uniform in the cramped locker room, trading it for jeans and a faded gray t-shirt that had seen better days. The October chill had already worked its way into the aging building, and I grabbed my jacket before heading out. 28 years old, and still driving a 1998 Ford pickup that coughed more than it purred. The engine turned over on the third try, and I pulled out of the station parking lot at exactly 11:15. Most nights I took the highway home, added maybe 10 minutes but avoided the sketchy industrial district on the south side. Tonight, though, my electric bill was 3 weeks overdue, and the reminder notice had been particularly threatening. 10 minutes meant 10 minutes I could spend unconscious instead of behind the wheel. The drizzle started 2 blocks into my shortcut, fine enough that it seemed more like mist than actual rain. Chicago in autumn. The streetlights grew sparser as I navigated deeper into the warehouse district. Most of the buildings abandoned or converted into storage facilities that nobody visited after dark. My headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating cracked pavement and the occasional piece of trash tumbling across the road. Then I saw the orange glow. My foot hit the brake before my brain fully processed what I was seeing. 40 meters ahead, flames licked upward from an overturned sedan, the vehicle resting on its roof like some massive dead beetle. Black smoke mixed with the drizzle, creating an oily haze that reflected the fire's light. The Mercedes emblem was still visible on what remained of the rear panel. Every instinct screamed at me to keep driving. Call it in, sure, but this wasn't my jurisdiction. Wasn't my shift, wasn't my problem. I had a personal kit in my truck bed. The one I'd put together myself after the department's budget cuts meant we couldn't always count on adequate supplies. My hand reached for my phone. That's when I heard it. A sound that cut through the crackling fire and my better judgment. A child crying. I was out of the truck before I'd made a conscious decision. Kit in one hand and flashlight in the other. Heat hit me like a physical wall as I got closer, and I could smell gasoline mixing with burning rubber, and something worse. The driver's side was crushed inward, the man inside clearly beyond help. But that crying. It came from the back seat. The rear passenger window had spiderwebbed, but not shattered completely. I could make out a small shape through the smoke and damaged glass, strapped into a car seat. The boy couldn't have been more than 3, dressed in clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He was screaming now, not just crying, and his small hands pulled uselessly at the straps holding him in place. I'd done vehicle extractions before, but never with flames this close, never alone, never with a kid. The fire was spreading forward from the engine, and I had minutes at best. I grabbed the window breaker from my kit and swung. Glass exploded inward, and something sharp bit into my left palm. Blood immediately welled up, but I ignored it as I reached through the opening. The car seat had a 5-point harness, and the impact had jammed the release mechanism. My fingers fumbled with the buckles, and I could feel the heat intensifying against my back. The boy had stopped crying and was staring at me with wide, light brown eyes that seemed to glow in the firelight. Smoke was getting thicker. Come on, come on. The buckle finally gave, and I dragged the car seat backward through the window frame. A jagged edge of remaining glass caught my forearm. Tearing through my jacket sleeve and the skin underneath, the pain was distant, unimportant. I had the boy in my arms now, pulling him free of the seat entirely and stumbling backward. 10 seconds later, the fuel tank exploded. The blast wave knocked us both down. I twisted as I fell, taking the impact on my shoulder and hip, while keeping the child pressed against my chest. My ears rang from the concussion, and when I managed to sit up, the entire vehicle was engulfed. No one could survive that. The man inside, whoever he'd been, was gone. The boy in my arms had gone silent, but his eyes were open and tracking. I did a rapid assessment by the light of the burning car, checking his pupils, feeling for obvious injuries. Bruising on his left shoulder where the harness had held him. Minor abrasions on his face. But his breathing was clear. No wheezing, no signs of smoke inhalation beyond what we'd both just inhaled. He'd been lucky. Impossibly lucky. I carried him back toward my truck, putting distance between us and the fire. My hands were really shaking now. adrenaline catching up with me. I set him down on the tailgate and wrapped my jacket around his small frame. He was watching me with an intensity unusual for such a young child. Not crying anymore, but clearly in shock. My phone came out on autopilot, dialing 911 even as I kept one hand on the boy to make sure he didn't slide off the tailgate. The dispatcher's voice was tinny and distant through the ringing in my ears. I gave her the location, described the scene, mentioned the deceased driver and the surviving child. She started to ask more questions, but I cut her off. The boy's lips moved, and I had to lean in close to hear him. His voice was barely a whisper, small and uncertain. Noah. He said it again, a little stronger. Noah. Your name? I asked, and he nodded. I started humming without thinking about it. Some half-remembered lullaby my mother used to sing. Noah's breathing began to even out, his small body relaxing incrementally. I kept one eye on the fire, making sure it wasn't spreading to anything else, and one on the child. The emergency operator was still talking in my ear when I heard the engines. Not fire engines. Not yet, though those sirens were approaching from the distance. These were different. Heavier. 3 black SUVs materialized out of the industrial darkness, like sharks scenting blood, moving fast but controlled. They formed a perimeter around the burning vehicle and my truck, and men started emerging before the engines had fully shut off. Armed men. Suits and firepower, moving with military precision. I put myself between them and Noah instinctively, even though it was probably useless. My heart, which had started to slow down, kicked back into overdrive. An older man approached with his hands slightly raised, palms out, maybe 55. Gray threading through dark hair, with the bearing of someone who'd spent time in uniform. His eyes went from me to Noah and back again, and something in his expression shifted. Relief, maybe. Or assessment. We're family, he said. His voice was calm but urgent, like he was trying not to spook a wounded animal. The boy's family. There was an attack. We need to secure him immediately. I didn't move. Prove it. He could have tried to take Noah by force. They outnumbered me and outgunned me, and we all knew it. Instead, he pulled out his phone with slow, deliberate movements and turned the screen toward me. The photo showed him standing next to a tall man in an expensive suit, both of them smiling at the camera. Between them, cradled in the suited man's arms, was a baby. Noah, maybe a year or two younger. Noah was leaning around me now, peering at the man. Recognition dawned on his small face. Tio Serge, he said quietly. I looked at the burning car, at the armed men, at Noah's torn clothes, and the way these people had appeared out of nowhere. Nothing about this was normal. Nothing about this was safe. But Noah knew this man, and whoever had attacked that car might still be out there. I'm coming with you, I said. To the hospital. I need to make sure he's properly evaluated and documented. The man, Sergio apparently, nodded immediately. Almost too quickly, like he'd been expecting the demand. Of course, we want that too. He gestured toward the nearest SUV, and I picked Noah up again, feeling him burrow against my shoulder. The vehicle's interior was as expensive as the exterior suggested. Leather seats, tinted windows so dark I could barely see out, and a communication system that looked military-grade. 2 other men climbed in with us, neither speaking but both keeping their attention divided between the windows and their phones. During the 12-minute drive, I listened to them talk. Not to me, but to each other and into their radios. Coded language, mostly, but certain words came through clearly. Package secure. Route compromised. Cleanup in progress. Boss en route. They were coordinating something much larger than a simple hospital visit. Moving pieces on a board I couldn't see. Noah had gone quiet against me, his breathing deep and even. Exhaustion or shock. Probably both. I kept my injured hand pressed against my thigh, trying not to bleed on the leather. My forearm throbbed in time with my heartbeat, and I could feel the cut on my palm every time I shifted position. The hospital they took us to wasn't a hospital. Not really. Private medical facility. The kind that catered to people who valued discretion as much as treatment. We went in through a side entrance. No waiting room, no intake desk. Just a private elevator that opened directly into what looked like a luxury suite that happened to have medical equipment in it. A doctor in expensive-looking scrubs appeared immediately, taking Noah from my arms with practiced efficiency. She was gentle, but thorough, examining him under bright lights while murmuring reassurances. Noah watched her but didn't cry, which seemed like a good sign. Sergio touched my elbow lightly. "The boss wants to thank you personally. He's on his way. Please let me have someone look at your injuries while we wait." I started to argue that I was fine, that I just needed to know Noah was okay, and then I could leave. But my head felt light, and when I looked down, I realized my jeans were soaked with blood from my hand. More than I'd thought. More than was probably good. "Okay," I said. "Okay." They led me to another room, similarly appointed, and I sank into a chair that probably cost more than my truck. A nurse appeared with supplies, and I let her take my hand, let her clean and examine the wound. She worked in silence, efficient and professional, and I found myself staring at the ceiling and wondering what exactly I'd just walked into. My alarm screamed at 6 a.m, and I seriously considered calling in sick for the first time in 3 years. Everything hurt. My palm throbbed with each heartbeat, the stitches pulling tight whenever I flexed my fingers. My shoulder had a massive bruise forming where I'd hit the pavement, and my back felt like I'd been in a car accident myself. But rent was due in 8 days, and I was already short by $200, so I dragged myself out of bed, showered carefully around my bandages, and headed to the station. Kevin took one look at me and raised both eyebrows. "You look like hell." "Thanks. You always know just what to say." I poured coffee that looked like motor oil and tasted worse, doctoring it with enough cream and sugar to make it drinkable. "That accident last night," he said, leaning against the counter with his own mug. "Cops came by early this morning, asked a bunch of questions about the report you called in. Then they left and said the case was closed. Mechanical failure. Driver lost control. No evidence of foul play." I wrapped both hands around my cup, feeling the heat seep through despite the bandage on my left palm. "That's what they're calling it." He shrugged. "I'm just telling you what they told me. My advice? Forget about it. You did good pulling that kid out, but whatever else was going on there, it's not our business." Sound advice. I should have taken it. Instead, I spent the entire shift replaying every detail, analyzing the way those SUVs had appeared within minutes, the military precision of Adrian's security team, the careful way he'd spoken about business rivals and territorial disputes, the fragments of conversation I'd overheard in the vehicle. None of it matched the story the police were selling. 2 days later, a delivery arrived during my afternoon shift. The courier asked for me specifically, handing over an arrangement so large I had to carry it with both arms. White lilies, dozens of them, elegant and fragrant. The card was simple, handwritten in script so perfect it looked like calligraphy. Gratitude eternal cannot be expressed in words. But I began trying. AC Sarah, one of the other paramedics, leaned over my shoulder to read the card. Well, who's AC? Nobody. Just someone I helped. She grinned. Nobody sends flowers like that for just helping. That's I want to get in your pants flowers right there. I shoved her away, but my face was burning. I tucked the card into my locker and tried to ignore the knowing looks from the rest of the crew for the remainder of the shift. The gifts kept coming. On Monday, a coffee delivery intercepted me before I even made it inside the station. My exact order, the one I'd mentioned once during that car ride. Oat milk latte with cinnamon, no sugar. How he remembered that detail from a 25-minute conversation at midnight, I couldn't figure out. Wednesday brought my truck back. I'd finally arranged to retrieve it from the medical facility when I walked out after my shift to find it sitting in the station parking lot, freshly washed and with a full tank of gas. The keys were in an envelope under the wiper blade, along with another note. You left this behind. I took the liberty of having it serviced. The inspection was overdue. I checked under the hood. New brake pads, fresh oil change. They'd even replaced my worn windshield wipers. $340 worth of work at least. Maybe more. I stood there in the parking lot, keys in hand, torn between gratitude and the uncomfortable feeling that accepting these things meant something I wasn't ready to define. Friday afternoon, an envelope appeared in my station mailbox. 2 tickets to the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Premium seats. I'd mentioned wanting to see them perform once, months ago, to a coworker. Somehow Adrian had known. Somehow he'd paid attention to a throwaway comment I'd made in casual conversation. Kevin found me staring at the tickets. This is getting weird, right? Like stalker weird? I don't think it's stalking if I told him about all these things. Did you tell him, or did he just somehow know? Because that's an important distinction. I couldn't answer that. Didn't want to examine it too closely. Thursday of the second week, Adrian appeared in person. I'd just finished an afternoon shift, was heading toward my truck with my bag slung over my shoulder. He was leaning against a black Mercedes, this one a sedan, rather than an SUV. No suit today. Dark jeans, a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up, looking more human and somehow more dangerous for it. My steps faltered, but I kept walking until I reached my truck, parked 3 spaces from his car. He straightened, sliding his hands into his pockets. Lauren. Adrian. I unlocked my door but didn't open it. What are you doing here? Noah asks about you. Every day. He calls you his angel. He drew this. Adrian produced a folded piece of paper from his back pocket, handing it over. I unfolded it carefully with my healing hand. A child's drawing in crayon. A stick figure with yellow hair, though my hair was brown, standing next to orange and red scribbles that could only be fire. The figure had a circle around its head. A halo. My throat tightened unexpectedly. How is he? Struggling. Nightmares. His therapist suggested that seeing you again might help. Let him confirm you're real, that you're safe. Help him process the trauma. Adrian shifted his weight, the first uncertain gesture I'd seen from him. I'm asking if you'd be willing to have lunch with us. Saturday. Somewhere public, wherever you'd feel comfortable. I should have said no. Should have recognized that getting more involved with Adrian Castrovani and his world was a terrible idea. But I kept seeing that drawing, that carefully rendered halo, and thinking about a 3-year-old boy who couldn't sleep. Okay, I said. Lunch. Somewhere public. Relief flashed across his face so quickly I almost missed it. Thank you. I'll pick you up at noon. I can drive myself. I'd prefer to drive you. Please. There was something in the way he said it, almost a plea, that made me relent. Fine. Noon. Saturday arrived cold and overcast. Typical Chicago autumn weather. I changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a forest green sweater that at least didn't have any holes or stains. Adrian pulled up exactly at noon in an SUV. Noah strapped into a car seat in the back. The moment Noah saw me through the window, his entire face lit up. He waved frantically, and I felt something in my chest twist. I climbed into the front passenger seat, twisting to look at him. Hi, Noah. Hi. He held up a plastic dinosaur. This is Rex. He's a T-Rex. Do you like dinosaurs? I love dinosaurs. Rex looks very fierce. He's the king. Noah's voice was solemn, like he was sharing crucial information. He eats meat. Adrian caught my eye, something almost like a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He's been talking about dinosaurs nonstop for 2 weeks. You're going to hear a lot about paleontology today. We drove to a restaurant on the lakefront, nice but not ostentatious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. Adrian had reserved a corner table, private but still visible to the rest of the restaurant. Noah sat between us in a booster seat, immediately pulling out crayons and a coloring book. The meal passed easier than I'd anticipated. Noah chattered about dinosaurs, about his preschool, about a dog he'd seen in the park. Adrian was attentive without hovering, cutting Noah's food into small pieces, wiping spills, but letting the boy's enthusiasm flow naturally. Between managing Noah, Adrian asked me questions. Real questions, not small talk. What made you become a paramedic? What's the worst call you've ever had? What's the best? He listened to my answers with complete attention, like every word mattered. I told him about my parents, about the car accident 8 years ago, the drunk driver who'd run a red light, the paramedics who'd done everything right, but couldn't save them, about how I'd felt so helpless, watching from behind the police barricade, and how I'd decided that day that I wanted to be the person who tried, who fought for every second, every chance. His expression softened as I spoke. I lost my wife 2 years ago. Car accident as well. Her brakes were sabotaged. She didn't suffer, they told me, but I'm not sure if they were telling the truth or just being kind. Noah was barely a year old. He doesn't remember her. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, but what else was there? She would have liked you, he said quietly. Sophia. She had a big heart, always helping people, even when it wasn't safe. We argued about it constantly. Noah's head drooped against my arm halfway through dessert, exhausted from excitement. I shifted carefully, letting him rest against my shoulder. Adrian watched us, and the expression on his face was complicated, tender and sad, and something else I couldn't identify. He hasn't relaxed like that with anyone since Sophia died. Adrian said, "You're good for him." When we got back to my building, Adrian walked me to my door again despite my protests. Noah had woken up enough to demand a hug goodbye, his small arms squeezing my neck. "Thank you," Adrian said after Noah released me. "For today, for all of it. You're welcome. Can I text you? Updates about Noah. Maybe arrange another visit." I hesitated, weighing caution against the memory of Noah's smile. "Okay." The messages started that evening. A photo of Noah showing off a drawing he'd made at school. A video of him saying goodnight to me through the phone camera. Updates about his nightmares decreasing, his therapist being pleased with his progress. But the conversations expanded beyond Noah. Adrian shared articles about topics we'd discussed at lunch, asked my opinion on current events, sent me recommendations for books and music. I found myself responding, engaging, looking forward to the vibrations of my phone. 2 weeks of messages, small windows into each other's lives. I learned he preferred scotch to wine, that he'd wanted to be an architect before inheriting his father's business, that he read military history before bed. He learned I was terrible at cooking, but great at baking, that I ran to deal with stress, that I'd always wanted to travel but never had the money or time. The line between gratitude and something else kept blurring, and I kept letting it happen, telling myself it was harmless. It was just friendship, just appreciation. Nothing more complicated than that. I almost believed it. 3 weeks after pulling Noah from that burning wreck, I got a call that shattered whatever illusions I'd been maintaining about Adrian's business. The dispatch came through at 11:40 on a Saturday night. Reported shooting at a warehouse in the industrial district. I recognized the address immediately. South Side, same general area where I'd found Noah's car. Kevin drove while I prepped equipment in the back, double-checking supplies with hands that had started trembling the moment I heard the location. We rolled up to a scene already secured by men in suits. Not police. Private security, the kind with bulges under their jackets that meant serious hardware. Yellow crime scene tape would have been more reassuring than the human perimeter they'd formed. Cold eyes tracking our ambulance as we pulled through. My gut twisted when I recognized 2 of the faces. Sergio stood near the warehouse entrance, phone pressed to his ear. Another man I'd seen in that SUV the night of the accident waved us toward a side door. "What have we got?" Kevin called out, grabbing the medical kit. "GSW to the shoulder. Subject is refusing hospital transport." Of course he was. I followed Kevin inside, my paramedic training taking over even as my mind raced. The warehouse was mostly empty, just some shipping containers and wooden crates stacked near the walls. The overhead lights were harsh, fluorescent, casting everything in stark relief. Joseph Grimaldiro sat on a metal folding chair in the center of the space, one hand pressed against his right shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers, dark and viscous. He was maybe 35, built like he spent serious time in the gym, with the kind of stillness that came from military training or worse. "I'm fine," he said through gritted teeth as we approached. "Don't need a hospital. Let me be the judge of that." I snapped on gloves and knelt beside him, gently moving his hand away from the wound. Entry wound high on the shoulder, missing the major vessels and bone by maybe an inch. Lucky. Incredibly lucky. "You're going to need more than a Band-Aid for this. Just stop the bleeding and wrap it." I've had worse. I bet he had. Kevin handed me gauze pads and I worked efficiently, packing the wound to control the hemorrhage. While my hands moved on autopilot, my ears picked up fragments of conversation from the men scattered around the warehouse. "Albanians are getting bold. That's 3 hits in 2 weeks. Vincent needs to verify his contacts. Someone's feeding them information. Boss wants lockdown protocol on all primary properties. No exceptions. Albanians. Hits. Boss." The words clicked together like puzzle pieces I'd been deliberately ignoring. Business rivals, Adrian had said. Territorial disputes. Clean euphemisms for violence and organized crime. For exactly the kind of world that had left Joseph bleeding in a warehouse at midnight. You're going to need antibiotics, I told Joseph, securing the bandage with medical tape. And this should be stitched properly. At least let me take you to the facility where they treated Noah. Something flickered in his expression at the boy's name. Recognition. Maybe respect. You're her. The one who pulled him out. Yeah. And right now I'm the one telling you this wound needs proper medical attention. He looked past me to where Sergio had appeared. The older man nodded once, and Joseph sighed. Fine. But no public hospital. Wouldn't dream of it, I muttered. Kevin and I packed up our equipment, and I was acutely aware of eyes following us all the way back to the ambulance. I climbed into the passenger seat and stared straight ahead as Kevin pulled away from the warehouse. That was weird as hell, Kevin said once we were several blocks away. Those weren't cops. No, they weren't. Lauren. His voice was serious now, concerned. Whatever those people are into, you need to stay away from it. I know you helped that kid, and that was a good thing. But this? He gestured back toward the warehouse. This is dangerous. I know, but knowing didn't make it simpler. I went home after our shift ended, showered, and sat on my bed with my phone in my hands for 20 minutes before I finally typed out a message. We need to talk. In person. Adrian's response came within 60 seconds. Where and when? We met the next afternoon at Millennium Park, in the open where there were tourists and families, and enough witnesses that I felt safe. Adrian arrived alone, dressed down in jeans and a leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there during our lunch by the lake. We walked along the path in silence for a few minutes before I found the words. I need you to be completely honest with me. No more careful phrasing. No more business rivals and territorial disputes. I need the truth. He stopped walking, turning to face me. Behind him, the Chicago skyline rose against an overcast sky. You were at the warehouse last night. I was. I treated one of your men. I heard them talking about Albanians and hits and lockdown protocols. I crossed my arms, less from cold than from the need to hold myself together. I'm not stupid, Adrian. I've suspected for a while now what you're involved in. But after last night, I can't pretend anymore. What do you want to know? Everything. The truth. All of it. He looked at me for a long moment, something like resignation crossing his features. Then he started talking. My father built an organization over 30 years. We control territory, offer protection to businesses, mediate disputes that the police won't or can't handle. We collect fees for these services. We have rules, codes that we don't break. No drugs. No human trafficking. No prostitution. My father believed in honor, and I've maintained that standard. He paused, jaw tightening. But yes, there's violence. When someone challenges our territory, when they threaten the people under our protection, we respond. Sometimes lethally. So you're the Mafia. The word felt strange on my tongue. Too Hollywood. Too dramatic, but accurate. That's what people call us. I call it being responsible for 300 families who depend on our organization for their livelihoods, for keeping neighborhoods safe that the city has abandoned. It's not clean, Lauren. It's never clean, but it's what I inherited when my father died 5 years ago, and I've tried to do it with as much integrity as the life allows. The attack on Noah, the man who died protecting him, that was this Albanian organization? Yes. They're trying to move into our territory. Take what we've built. Marco died because he was in the way. Noah almost died because he's my son. His voice roughened on the last words. And now you're in danger too. Just by association. That stopped me. What? You've been seen with me. With Noah. You're in my phone records, my security logs. If the Albanians want to hurt me, they'll look for weak points. People I care about. He took a step closer, and I could see the fear beneath his controlled exterior. I can distance myself completely if that's what you want. I'll understand. Noah will understand eventually. I don't want you in this world, Lauren, but I also can't seem to stay away from you. And that makes me selfish and dangerous to you both. I processed his words, feeling the weight of them. The truth I'd demanded had come with consequences I hadn't fully considered. What if I need time to think about what this means? Take all the time you need, but if you decide you want distance, you tell me directly. Don't just disappear. Okay, I need time. He nodded once, respecting the boundary I was drawing even though I could see it cost him. My number doesn't change. Call if you need anything, or if you just want to talk. I walked away from him in that park, my mind spinning. Spent the next 2 weeks trying to convince myself that cutting ties was the smart thing, the safe thing. I stopped responding to texts. Didn't answer when his name appeared on my phone screen. Went through the motions of my life and tried not to think about dark eyes and a little boy who drew pictures of angels. But I thought about them constantly. About the way Adrian listened when I talked. Really listened. Like my thoughts mattered. About Noah's laugh and his dinosaur facts and the way he'd fallen asleep against my shoulder. About honor and violence and the gray spaces between right and wrong that nobody prepared you for in paramedic training. 14 days of silence. 14 days of convincing myself I'd made the right choice. Then I finished a night shift, walked out to the hospital parking lot at 10:15 on a Thursday evening, and found 2 men waiting by my truck. They weren't Adrian's men. I knew that immediately from the way they stood, from the unfamiliar faces and the accent when one of them spoke. Lauren Mitchell? I stopped walking, hand tightening around my keys. Who's asking? We have questions about Adrian Castrovani. You will answer them. The other one moved to flank me, cutting off my route back to the hospital. My heart hammered against my ribs, and I looked around wildly for witnesses. The parking lot was nearly empty, poorly lit, designed for function rather than safety. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play stupid. Where does he keep the boy? What routes does he use? What properties does he own that aren't in public records? I don't know anything. I barely know him. The first man took a step closer, and I could smell cigarettes and something sharper. Danger. We know you spent time with him. With his son. You will tell us what we want to know. I opened my mouth to scream. The second man's hand clamped over my face, rough palm muffling the sound. The other grabbed my arm, twisting it behind my back hard enough to send pain shooting through my shoulder. My keys clattered to the pavement. This was happening. This was really happening. Terror flooded my system, followed by a surge of pure rage. I brought my heel down hard on the instep of the man holding me, felt the impact through my boot. He grunted but didn't let go. I thrashed, trying to break free, trying to make enough noise that someone, anyone, would notice. Then headlights swept across the parking lot. An SUV, black and massive, took the turn too fast. Tires squealed as it cut across parking spaces, bearing down on us. The men holding me hesitated, then released me and ran. I stumbled forward, caught myself on the hood of my truck, gasping for air. The SUV's doors opened before it had fully stopped. Sergio emerged from the driver's side, another man I recognized from the warehouse climbing out of the passenger seat. They looked at me, then in the direction my attackers had fled. Are you hurt? Sergio asked, already pulling out his phone. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't have picked up my keys if I tried. Boss maintained light surveillance, just in case. There was a shift change, a 3-minute gap in coverage. We got here as fast as we could. He was already talking into the phone, rapid-fire Italian that I couldn't follow. 10 minutes later, another vehicle arrived. Adrian got out looking like violence barely contained, his expression colder than I'd ever seen it. He scanned the parking lot. Then his eyes locked on me. The ice thawed slightly, replaced by something that might have been relief. He didn't ask permission before pulling me into his arms. I let him, let myself lean against the solid warmth of him, while the shaking gradually subsided. You're coming with me, he said quietly. Right now. This isn't a request, Lauren. Those men marked you. You're not safe here anymore. I should have argued. Should have insisted on keeping my independence, my normal life. But my arm hurt where they'd grabbed me, and I could still feel that hand over my mouth, cutting off my air. I was terrified and exhausted, and so tired of being alone. Okay, I whispered. Okay. The mansion in Evanston was something out of a different world. 3 stories of stone and glass set back from the road behind iron gates and manicured gardens. Security checkpoints at the entrance, guards stationed at intervals around the property, cameras mounted discreetly at every angle. A fortress pretending to be a home. Sergio drove us through the gates while Adrian sat beside me in the back seat, his presence a mix of comfort and pressure. He hadn't let go of my hand since we'd left the hospital parking lot, his thumb tracing absent patterns across my knuckles. The guest suite they installed me in was bigger than my entire apartment. King bed with sheets that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Bathroom done in white marble with a soaking tub and a shower that had more settings than my truck. Walk-in closet, private balcony overlooking the gardens. Luxury that felt suffocating rather than comfortable. "This is temporary," Adrian said, reading my expression. "Just until we neutralize the Albanian threat. You can go back to your life once it's safe." I wanted to believe him. Wanted to think this was just a brief interruption. A few days of inconvenience before everything returned to normal. But the way he said it, the careful distance in his tone, suggested he didn't believe it either. The first week felt like being trapped in a 5-star prison. Adrian insisted I keep working, said he wouldn't let me abandon my identity just because he'd dragged me into his world. So every shift, 2 guards in an unmarked car followed my truck at a discreet distance. They never approached me, never made their presence obvious to my coworkers. But I always knew they were there. Kevin noticed anyway. Called me out during a break, concern written across his weathered face. "You going to tell me why you've got a security detail now?" "Ex-boyfriend trouble," I lied, the words tasting sour. "Just being cautious." He didn't believe me, but he let it drop. What else could he do? The afternoons were harder. I'd return to the mansion, this beautiful cage, and have nothing to do but think. Noah changed that. The first day he discovered I was living there, he appeared at my suite door clutching a plastic stegosaurus and a stack of coloring books. Want to color with me? How could I say no to that? We spread out on the floor of my suite, Noah chattering about his day at preschool while carefully staying inside the lines of a T-Rex picture. His presence made the space feel less like a prison cell and more like a home. It became routine. I'd finish my shift, drive back with my shadow security detail, and find Noah waiting. We'd color or build with blocks or read stories until dinner. He taught me the scientific names of dinosaurs. I taught him the bones of the human skeleton using a coloring book I'd brought from work. He was smart, curious, affectionate in the way of children who'd known loss too young. Dinners were family affairs. Adrian insisted on it, no matter how late he worked or how many meetings he had scheduled. We'd sit together at the massive dining table, Noah between us, eating meals prepared by Adrian's chef. The food was incredible, but I barely tasted it. Too aware of Adrian across from me, of the strange domesticity we'd fallen into. "You're good with him," Adrian said one evening after Noah had been taken upstairs to bed. We were lingering over coffee, the house quiet around us. "He's attached to you." "I'm attached to him too. He's a sweet kid. He calls you his angel. Did you know that?" Adrian's expression was soft in the candlelight. "Not to your face, but when he prays at night, he thanks God for his angel who saved him from the fire." My throat tightened. "Adrian, I know this isn't what you wanted. This life, this situation, but I'm grateful you're here. Not just for Noah. For me too." The conversations deepened after Noah was asleep. Adrian would find me in the library or on the balcony of my suite, and we'd talk for hours. He told me about his brothers, both killed in a territory war when he was barely out of college. About inheriting the organization at 25, when his father had a fatal heart attack. Thrust into leadership before he was ready. About the weight of responsibility for hundreds of families who depended on his decisions. I told him about the loneliness after my parents died. About throwing myself into work to avoid dealing with the grief. About the apartment that never felt like home. The friendships that had faded because I had nothing left to give after exhausting myself on shift. About feeling hollow inside, going through motions without purpose beyond the next emergency call. "You're not hollow," Adrian said quietly. "You're one of the most vital people I've ever met. Everything you do completely, with your whole heart." The attraction between us had been building since that first night. But now, living under the same roof, it became impossible to ignore. His hand brushing mine when we passed in the hallway. The way his eyes followed me when he thought I wasn't looking. The electric tension whenever we were alone together. 3 weeks into my stay, everything came to a head. Adrian received intelligence about a planned bombing, Albanian retaliation for recent losses. He wanted to move me to a rural property, even more isolated, even more removed from my life. I snapped. I'm not a chess piece you can move around the board whenever it's convenient. We were in his study, the door closed, and I'd never seen him rattled before. But now his control was cracking, frustration bleeding through. I'm trying to keep you alive. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be watched constantly, to have my every movement tracked, to live in this beautiful cage where I can't even walk to the corner store without an armed escort. Then what do you want? He was in my space now, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Tell me what you want, Lauren, because I'm trying to figure out how to keep you safe while respecting your autonomy, and I'm failing at both. I want to know why I'm really here. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Is this just about protection? About keeping me safe until the Albanian threat is over? Or is this about something else? You know it's about something else. His voice dropped, rough and honest. You've known since the beginning. Then say it. Stop dancing around it. Say what this is. I can't stop thinking about you. The words came out like a confession, like something he'd been holding back for too long. Noah asks about you constantly, calls you his Lauren mom when he thinks I can't hear, and I imagine what it would be like if you stayed. Not because you have to, not because it's safer, but because you chose to. Because you wanted to be part of this, part of us. You're asking me to give up my entire life. No, I'm asking if you want something different. If maybe the life you had before wasn't the life you wanted anyway. He lifted his hand, hesitating before touching my face. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you were happy before, that you want to go back to that empty apartment, and those endless shifts and the loneliness you described. Tell me. And I'll arrange better security so you can leave tomorrow. I couldn't tell him that. Couldn't lie when he was looking at me like I was something precious and terrifying all at once. Instead, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. He went still for half a second, surprise freezing him in place. Then his arms came around me, pulling me against him as he kissed me back with an intensity that stole my breath. This wasn't gentle or tentative. This was months of tension finally breaking, need and want, and something deeper tangling together. We broke apart, both breathing hard. I pressed my forehead against his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath my palm. This doesn't fix anything, I said. I still have questions. I still don't know if I can accept all of this. I know. His hand moved through my hair, tender despite the desperation I'd felt in his kiss. But it's a start. That night changed things between us. We didn't sleep together, not yet, but the boundaries had shifted. He'd kiss me goodnight after Noah went to bed. I'd find excuses to touch him, small points of contact that both of us seemed to crave. The mansion started feeling less like a prison and more like a possibility, but I couldn't quite surrender to it. Couldn't let go of the part of me that insisted this was temporary, that I'd go back to my real life eventually. I held something back, kept a piece of myself protected, because trusting completely felt like stepping off a cliff, with no idea if anyone would catch me. Adrian seemed to understand. He didn't push, didn't demand more than I was ready to give, just kept showing up, kept being patient, kept proving with actions rather than words that this thing between us was real. Noah noticed the shift. Children always do. One afternoon while we were building a block tower, he looked up at me with those light brown eyes so much like his mother's. Are you going to stay forever? The question hit me harder than it should have. I don't know, buddy. That's complicated. But you want to stay? He wasn't letting it go. Small face serious. Because I want you to stay. Daddy's happier when you're here. He smiles more. I pulled him into a hug, feeling tears prick my eyes. We'll see, okay? But no matter what happens, I care about you very much. Okay. He seemed satisfied with that non-answer in the way only children can be, immediately returning his attention to the block tower. Can you hand me the blue one? That evening, after Noah was asleep, Adrian found me on the balcony of my suite. He wrapped a blanket around my shoulders against the November chill and stood beside me, both of us looking out at the garden lights. Noah asked if I was staying forever, I said. What did you tell him? That I didn't know, that it was complicated. I turned to face him. Was that wrong? It was honest. That's never wrong. He was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I hope you stay. Not just until this is over. I hope you choose this. Choose us. I'm trying to figure out what that even means. What choosing you means when your life is so different from anything I've ever known. It means being a family. Imperfect and complicated and sometimes dangerous, but family nonetheless. It means mattering to someone, having someone matter to you. He turned to me, and in the low light I could see vulnerability in his expression. I haven't let myself want anything beyond survival and duty for 2 years. You make me want more. I reached for his hand, lacing our fingers together. I'm scared. I know. So am I. He brought our joined hands up, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. We stood there in the cold, holding on to each other. And for the first time since arriving at the mansion, I let myself imagine staying. Really staying. Not as a temporary guest, but as someone who belonged. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, and I wasn't ready to commit to it yet, but I was starting to see the shape of what it could be. This life that was being offered. Starting to think that maybe, just maybe, I wanted it. By week 5, I'd stopped thinking of the mansion as temporary housing. My clothes filled the walk-in closet. My toiletries spread across the marble bathroom counter. Noah had started bringing his homework to my suite automatically, spreading his papers across my desk while I reviewed medical journals. The 3 of us had fallen into rhythms that felt dangerously close to permanent. But the war with the Albanians wasn't going well. I could see it in the tension Adrian carried, in the late-night meetings that stretched past midnight, in the increased security protocols that had everyone on edge. They were always one step ahead, anticipating moves before they were made, hitting targets with precision that suggested inside information. I was reading in the library one afternoon when raised voices echoed from Adrian's study. The door was closed, but sound carried through the old house. I shouldn't have eavesdropped. Should have gone back to my suite, given them privacy. Instead, I moved closer to the study door. 3 warehouses in 2 weeks, Adrian. They knew exactly where to hit and when. That was Vincent Pellegrini, one of Adrian's lieutenants. I'd met him briefly at one of the dinners. Early 40s, with the coiled energy of someone always ready for violence. I'm aware of the losses. Adrian's voice was cold, controlled. What I need is an explanation. Someone's feeding them information. Has to be. The timing is too perfect. Through the study's glass wall, I could see 8 men gathered around Adrian's desk. All senior leadership, from what I understood of the organization's structure. Vincent stood nearest to Adrian, gesturing emphatically. Even from my limited vantage point, I could see the suspicion crackling between them. Adrian had given me permission weeks ago to observe these meetings if I wanted. Said that if I was going to be part of this world, I should understand how it functioned. I'd declined then, not ready to see that side of his life. But now curiosity and concern pulled me forward. I entered quietly, and Adrian's eyes tracked the movement immediately. For a second, I thought he might ask me to leave. Instead, he gave a barely perceptible nod toward the empty chair in the corner. An invitation. Vincent's behavior has changed over the past month, Adrian was saying. Arriving late to meetings, avoiding eye contact. His phone rings constantly during strategic discussions. Vincent's face darkened. Are you accusing me of something? I'm stating facts. You were passed over for promotion to chief counsel 8 months ago. Joseph got the position. That creates motive. I've been with this organization for 15 years. Vincent's voice shook with barely contained rage. I've bled for it. Lost friends. Sacrificed everything. And you think I'd betray you over a promotion? I think people are complicated. I think resentment builds in ways we don't always recognize. Adrian's tone remained level, which somehow made the accusation more cutting. I'm ordering a full audit of your communications and finances. The room erupted in overlapping voices. Support for Adrian's caution, defense of Vincent's loyalty, arguments about trust and necessity. I watched Adrian manage them with calm authority, never raising his voice, but somehow commanding absolute attention when he spoke. After the meeting broke, I lingered while the other men filed out. Vincent passed me without acknowledgement, his jaw tight with anger. Only after the door closed did I approach Adrian's desk. Do you really think it's him? I think someone is betraying us, and Vincent has exhibited concerning patterns. Adrian rubbed his temples, exhaustion showing through his usual control. But you disagree. I don't know enough to disagree. But in emergency medicine, we're taught that the most obvious symptom isn't always the real problem. Sometimes it's masking something else entirely. I perched on the edge of his desk. What if Vincent's behavior is a response to stress rather than guilt? What if focusing on him means you miss the actual leak? He considered this. Dark eyes studying my face. Who else would you look at? Everyone with access to the information that's being leaked. Cross-reference who knew about each compromised location and when. Look for patterns beyond just suspicious behavior. You're saying I should expand the investigation. I'm saying don't let confirmation bias narrow your focus too early. You already suspect Vincent, so you're seeing everything through that lens. Adrian reached out, pulling me closer until I stood between his knees. How did I survive 2 years without you? I have no idea. You clearly make terrible decisions when left unsupervised. He smiled. That rare, genuine expression that transformed his face. Terrible decisions like trusting you with strategic planning. The worst. The expanded investigation took 3 days. Adrian brought in outside contractors, specialists in digital forensics and financial tracking. They tore through communication records, bank accounts, and travel patterns of everyone with security clearance. I watched some of it from my corner chair, Adrian's silent observer, fascinated by the methodical efficiency of it all. Vincent was cleared. His changed behavior traced back to his daughter's struggles with anxiety, requiring increased therapy appointments that conflicted with his schedule. The frequent phone calls were from her school counselor. The distraction was guilt over not being present enough, not betrayal. But the investigation turned up something else. Sarah Winters, the senior accountant who'd been with the organization for 20 years. A 52-year-old widow with a son who had special needs, living quietly in the suburbs. Her digital footprint showed encrypted communications with a number traced back to an Albanian lieutenant. Adrian called her into his study alone. I watched through the glass wall as Sarah entered, expecting a routine meeting. Watched her face crumble when she saw the laptop open on Adrian's desk, the evidence displayed clearly. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing before Adrian said a single word. He let her cry for a full minute before speaking. His voice was too quiet for me to hear, but I saw Sarah's body language. Defeat. Relief. Terror. She was talking now, words spilling out in a rush. Adrian listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. Finally, he picked up his phone, made a call. 20 minutes later, Sergio entered the study. Adrian spoke briefly, and Sergio nodded, leaving again. Sarah remained in the chair, hands clasped in her lap, tears still streaming down her face. Another hour passed. Then Adrian's security team returned, this time with a teenage boy. 17, maybe 18. With the awkward build of someone not quite grown into their frame. He saw Sarah and immediately rushed to her, and she stood to embrace him, holding him like she'd thought she'd never see him again. Adrian emerged from the study and found me in the library where I'd retreated. He looked drained, older than his 35 years. They had her son, he said without preamble. Took him from his care facility 3 weeks ago. Said they'd kill him if she didn't cooperate. She's been passing information to keep him alive. Is he okay? Scared, malnourished, but alive. Adrian poured himself scotch from the bar cart, drinking it in one swallow. We extracted him from an Albanian safe house an hour ago. 4 men guarding him. We have them in custody now. What happens to Sarah? She's fired. Effective immediately. I'm setting up a trust for her son's care, enough to cover his needs for life. But she can never work for us again. And if she contacts any of our people, the consequences will be severe. He poured another drink but didn't raise it to his lips. She betrayed us. Got 3 men injured, compromised multiple operations. But she did it under duress, to save her child. How do I punish that? I moved to stand beside him, taking the glass from his hand and setting it down. You don't. You set boundaries and consequences, but you show mercy where you can, which is exactly what you're doing. My father would have killed her. Killed the son too, probably, to send a message about what happens when you betray the family. You're not your father. No. He pulled me against him, resting his chin on top of my head. I'm trying to be better, build something that doesn't require quite so much blood. But nights like this, I wonder if I'm just naive. If mercy is weakness in this world, mercy is strength. It takes more courage to show compassion than to default to violence. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. You're transforming this organization, Adrian. Maybe not as fast as you'd like, but I see it. The way your men respect you, not just fear you. The code you maintain even when it's harder. You're building something different. I want Noah to inherit something legitimate. 5-year plan to transition everything to legal operations, real estate, investments, security consulting. Get out of the gray areas entirely. His hands moved through my hair, that gesture he used when he needed grounding. I want him to have choices I never had. Want him to grow up without the weight I carry. He will. You're making sure of that. Vincent appeared at the library door, hesitant. Boss? Can I speak with you? Of course. Adrian didn't release me, but he turned so we both faced Vincent. Some silent statement about my place here, my right to witness these moments. I wanted to apologize for my reaction earlier. You were right to investigate. In your position, I would have done the same. Vincent's gaze flicked to me, then back to Adrian. Also wanted to thank Lauren. If she hadn't suggested broadening the investigation, I might still be under suspicion. We'd have missed the real problem. Lauren has valuable perspective. I'm learning to listen to it more often. After Vincent left, Adrian and I remained in the library, standing in comfortable silence. Outside, night had fallen completely, the gardens illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. When this is over, Adrian said quietly, when the Albanian threat is neutralized and it's safe for you to leave, I want you to know that you have a choice. You can go back to your old life with my gratitude and protection. Or you can stay. Not as a guest. Not temporarily. As part of this family. As mine. The word sent heat through my chest. Mine. Possessive and intense. But also offering something I'd been missing for years. Belonging. Purpose. Home. I don't know how to be part of this world, I admitted. You're already part of it. You've been part of it since you pulled Noah from that fire. The question is whether you want to make it official. What would that even look like? However you want it to. You keep working as a paramedic if that's important to you. You help with strategic planning if that interests you. You focus on Noah, or you build something entirely your own. I'm not asking you to give up who you are, Lauren. I'm asking if who you are has room for us. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Not yet. But I kissed him. Trying to communicate through action what I couldn't put into words. He responded with the same intensity, the same desperate need. And we lost ourselves in each other until the fear and uncertainty faded into something simpler. Want. Connection. The fragile hope that maybe this impossible thing between us could actually work. With Sarah's betrayal exposed and the information leak sealed, Adrian moved forward with his endgame against the Albanians. He called a summit with 5 other Italian families from across the Midwest, proposing a coalition to eliminate the Albanian threat permanently. Territory would be divided after. Agreements formalized. Peace maintained through mutual interest rather than constant warfare. The meeting was scheduled for Saturday evening at a restaurant in neutral territory, a place owned by a respected mediator with no stakes in the conflict. Adrian spent days preparing, reviewing maps and negotiation points, coordinating with allies. He was gone by 7 that evening, taking Sergio and 6 of his best men. I stayed home with Noah, the mansion secured with 10 guards stationed around the property. Every system was active, every protocol in place. We were safe. Adrian had assured me of that before he left, kissing me goodbye at the door like this was routine, like he wasn't driving off to negotiate warfare with men who solved problems with bullets. I put Noah to bed at his usual time, reading 3 stories instead of the customary 2, because he kept requesting just 1 more. He finally drifted off around 8:30, clutching his stuffed dinosaur, and I left his door cracked so I could hear if he called out. The library became my refuge. I curled up in the leather chair Adrian favored, trying to focus on a medical journal, but reading the same paragraph repeatedly without comprehension. My phone sat on the side table, volume turned up, waiting for updates that didn't come. At 10:15, every light in the house went dark simultaneously. My heart stopped, then kicked into overdrive. I grabbed my phone, using its flashlight to navigate. The backup generators should have engaged within 10 seconds. Should have restored power to critical systems and emergency lighting. Silence met me instead, thick and suffocating. Training took over. I ran for Noah's room, finding him still asleep despite the sudden darkness. Scooped him up, blanket and dinosaur and all, and headed for Adrian's suite. He'd shown me the panic room weeks ago. a reinforced space behind a false bookshelf with independent power and communications. I reached the suite and triggered the release mechanism. Nothing. The electronic lock was dead, and the manual override wasn't responding. Someone had sabotaged the system comprehensively. Terror crystallized into diamond-sharp clarity. They'd planned this. Planned it perfectly. Footsteps thundered below, then the sharp crack of breaking glass. Multiple entry points. Coordinated assault. I couldn't get to the panic room, couldn't secure Noah in the one place designed to keep him safe. Then, I remembered. Adrian had mentioned it casually one evening, pointing out a section of his walk-in closet. A hidden passage. Old-fashioned but effective, dating back to the house's original construction. It led to a tunnel that emerged 3 blocks away. His family's insurance policy, maintained more from tradition than expectation of need. I carried Noah to the closet, found the panel Adrian had indicated, and pushed. It swung inward, revealing narrow stairs descending into darkness. Cold air rushed up, stale and earthy. "Noah, honey, I need you to wake up." I kept my voice gentle but urgent. His eyes fluttered open, confused and frightened. "Remember how Daddy told you about the secret tunnel? We're going to play a game. You're going to go down these stairs with your flashlight and sit at the bottom. Don't make any sound, okay? Like hide and seek. Where are you going? I need to make sure the house is safe. But if anyone comes except Daddy, Sergio, or me, you run through the tunnel. Can you be brave for me?" He nodded, lower lip trembling but holding back tears. I activated the flashlight on my phone, set it to low brightness, and handed it to him. Watched him disappear down the stairs, the light bouncing off stone walls. Once he was out of sight, I repositioned the panel, making it look undisturbed. Then I went hunting for a phone. Adrian's office was on the first floor, connected to a dedicated landline that bypassed normal telecommunications. If any phone in this house would still work, it would be that one. I made it halfway down the grand staircase before I heard voices. Not English. Albanian, I guessed from the harsh consonants. I retreated, my mind racing through options. The guest bedroom adjacent to the study had a window overlooking the grounds. If I could reach it, signal the external guards. But 2 men appeared in the hallway below, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. One looked up, and our eyes met across 20 feet of open air. He shouted something, and footsteps converged on the staircase. I ran, no longer worried about stealth, just speed. Ducked into the nearest room, locked the door knowing it would buy me seconds at most. The room had been a guest suite before I moved in. Furniture covered in sheets, unlived in for months. I needed a weapon. Adrian kept firearms throughout the house, protocol in case something like this happened. The nightstand. He'd shown me every location, insisted I know how to access them. I yanked open the drawer, found the revolver, checked the cylinder. 6 rounds. I'd never fired a gun outside of the single training session Adrian had insisted on weeks ago. The door shuddered under impact. Once. Twice. The lock gave on the 3rd hit, and 2 men burst through. They saw me, saw the gun, and one started laughing. Like this was entertaining rather than threatening. I closed my eyes and pulled the trigger. The recoil shocked me, the explosion deafening in the enclosed space. I opened my eyes to find my shot had gone wide, putting a hole in the wall 3 feet from the nearest intruder. But the sound had made them pause, reassess. The second shot I aimed more carefully. Still missed, but closer this time. Hit the door frame near the first man's shoulder. He swore, ducking back. His partner charged forward, closing the distance before I could fire again. He grabbed the gun, twisting my wrist until pain shot up my arm, and I had to release it. The weapon clattered to the floor, and he shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, caught myself on the bed frame, started calculating odds of getting past them, getting to the stairs, getting anywhere that wasn't trapped in this room. Rough hands grabbed my arms, yanked them behind my back. I thrashed, got an elbow into someone's ribs, heard a satisfying grunt of pain. Then they had me properly restrained, dragging me out of the room and down the stairs. The main floor was chaos. More men than I could count, flashlights everywhere, the security team bound and kneeling against the far wall. Alive, at least. I counted 8 guards, all subdued, all conscious. Small mercy. They dragged me to the center of the room and forced me to my knees. A man stepped forward, older than the others, maybe 50, with scars crisscrossing his face and neck. He studied me with the detached interest of someone evaluating livestock. Lauren Mitchell, the paramedic. Adrian's weakness. His English carried a heavy accent but was perfectly understandable. You know where the boy is? He's not here. Adrian moved him days ago. You're lying. The child sleeps here. We have surveillance. We know his schedule. He crouched in front of me, close enough that I could smell cigarettes and something medicinal. Tell me where he is, and I make this quick. Stay quiet, and we hurt you until you talk anyway. I don't know anything. He backhanded me, the impact snapping my head to the side. Blood filled my mouth, copper and thick. I spat it at his feet, earning another hit that made my vision blur. Castrovani took everything from us. Now we take everything from him. His organization, his territory, his son, his woman. Where is the boy? I stayed silent, using the pain to focus, to keep from breaking. They'd search the house eventually, find Noah in the tunnel. But every minute I bought him was another minute closer to potential rescue. Then headlights swept through the broken windows. Multiple vehicles, moving fast. The Albanians noticed too, sudden tension rippling through the room. The man in front of me stood, barking orders in his own language. The front doors exploded inward before anyone could respond. Adrian came through like a force of nature, gun drawn, 3 men flanking him. He took in the scene instantly, his security team bound. Me on my knees, blood on my face. The Albanian leader's hand wrapped in my hair. A knife I hadn't seen now pressed against my throat. Everything stopped. I could feel the blade against my skin, cold and sharp. A whisper away from cutting deep. You're finished, Castrovani. The Albanian's voice was triumphant. Drop your weapon or she dies. Adrian's face was a mask I'd never seen before. Not angry, beyond anger. Empty of everything except lethal intent. His gun remained raised, steady, pointed at the man holding me. You touch her again, and what I do to you will make you beg for death. Big words from a man who's about to watch his woman bleed out. The knife pressed harder, and I felt skin break. Warm blood trickling down my neck. The gunshot came from outside. Through the broken window, impossibly precise. The Albanian's head jerked back and he dropped without a sound. The knife clattered away from my throat as his grip released. I collapsed forward, catching myself on my hands, gasping. Chaos erupted. Adrian's men engaged the Albanians in brutal close-quarters combat. Gunfire, shouting, bodies hitting the floor. I crawled away from the violence, trying to reach the wall, to make myself small and invisible. Adrian reached me before I'd gone 3 feet, pulling me against him with one arm while still maintaining his weapon with the other. His hand went to my neck, checking the wound, and I felt him tremble. Noah's safe. Tunnel in your closet at the bottom of the stairs. He's scared, but unharmed. The words seemed to break something in him. He pulled me impossibly closer, his face buried against my hair. Around us, the fight was ending. The Albanians who weren't dead were surrendering, hands raised, weapons dropped. 3 minutes from start to finish. Efficient. Brutal. Final. I love you. The words came out raw, torn from somewhere deep. I love you and I almost lost you and I can't, Lauren. I can't. I pulled back enough to see his face, to look into those dark eyes that had haunted me since the first night. My hand came up to cup his jaw, feeling the tension there, the barely controlled violence that he'd turned outward to protect me. I love you too. I should have said it before. Should have told you weeks ago. Say it again. I love you, Adrian Castrovani. He kissed me then, desperate and fierce, tasting of fear and relief and promise. When we broke apart, Sergio was standing nearby, tactfully looking away. But I caught his expression before he schooled it. Approval. Maybe even joy. I'll get Noah, Sergio said quietly. Adrian nodded, not releasing me. We stayed there on the floor, surrounded by violence and aftermath, while Sergio disappeared upstairs. He returned minutes later with Noah, who was pale but composed, clutching his dinosaur. When he saw us, his composure cracked. He launched himself at Adrian, and I found myself in the middle of a 3-person embrace, Noah crying against his father's chest while Adrian murmured reassurances in Italian. Eventually we moved to the library, the only room in the house that hadn't been touched by the invasion. Adrian's men secured the premises, removed the bodies, attended to the injured guards. Police would be notified with the carefully edited version of events that Adrian's lawyers had perfected over the years. The story would be home invasion, defensive action. Investigation quietly closed. Noah fell asleep between us on the couch, exhausted by fear and relief. Adrian kept one hand on his son, the other laced with mine, like he needed to physically confirm we were both real and safe. "It's over," he said quietly. "The Albanian leadership is gone. The coalition voted unanimously for permanent peace accords. Territory division is signed. This war is finished. And us? Us is just beginning." He lifted our joined hands, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. "If you still want it, still want this life." I looked at Noah sleeping peacefully despite everything, at Adrian's face showing every emotion he usually kept locked away, at the home we'd built in the midst of violence and uncertainty. This wasn't the life I'd imagined. Wasn't safe or simple or anything I'd thought I wanted, but it was real. And it was mine. And I was choosing it. I want it. I want this. I want you. His smile was brilliant and rare. Then you have me. All of me. For as long as you'll have me. That's going to be a very long time. Good. He kissed me again, gentle this time. A promise rather than desperation. Because I'm never letting you go. The week after the attack, Adrian refused to leave the mansion, canceled every meeting, delegated every decision, and spent his days with us. He was different. The careful control he usually maintained had cracked, leaving something rawer underneath. He'd find me in whatever room I occupied, and just stand there, watching, like he needed visual confirmation that I was real and breathing. Noah noticed too. Asked me one afternoon while we colored, his small voice uncertain, if Daddy was okay. I didn't have a good answer. How do you explain to a 3-year-old that his father had almost lost everything that mattered and was still processing that terror? I went back to work 2 weeks later. Adrian wanted me to wait longer, but I needed the normalcy, needed to remember I was more than just someone who'd survived violence. Kevin took one look at the fading bruises on my face and the bandage on my neck and didn't ask questions. Just said he was glad I was alive and handed me a coffee. My shadow security detail had been upgraded. 2 cars now instead of 1, 4 men instead of 2. They maintained their distance, but their presence was impossible to ignore. I'd stopped pretending this was temporary, stopped imagining a return to my old life of solo drives and empty apartments. The mansion became home in all the ways that mattered. I moved my belongings from the guest suite to Adrian's room without discussion. The transition so natural neither of us commented on it. His closet held my jeans and his tailored suits. His bathroom counter overflowed with my products alongside his expensive cologne. We fell asleep tangled together and woke the same way. And it felt like breathing. Essential. Inevitable. Noah took to calling me Lauren Mom when he thought we weren't listening. I'd hear him talking to his stuffed animals, narrating elaborate dinosaur adventures where Lauren Mom saved the day. The first time Adrian and I actually heard it, we exchanged looks across the dinner table. That silent conversation married couples have, entire paragraphs communicated in seconds. That evening, after Noah was asleep, Adrian brought it up while we sat on the balcony, watching the garden lights flicker against November darkness. He wants to call you Mom. He asked me yesterday if it would be okay. My throat tightened. What did you tell him? That he should ask you himself. That names are important and should be chosen, not assumed. Adrian pulled me closer against the cold. But I told him I thought you'd say yes. You were right. The next morning, Noah crawled into bed between us at 6, unusually quiet. I was barely awake, but I felt Adrian prop himself up on one elbow, giving Noah his full attention. Can I ask you something, Lauren? Always, buddy. Daddy said you get to decide if I can call you Mom. Do you want me to? He was studying his hands, shy suddenly in a way he rarely was with us. Because you do Mom things. You read me stories and help with homework and make sure I eat vegetables. And you stayed when things were scary. That's what moms do. I had to blink hard against sudden tears. I would be honored if you called me Mom. His face lit up brighter than the garden lights, and he threw himself at me in a hug that knocked the remaining air from my lungs. Adrian was watching us with an expression so soft, so full of love, that it hurt to look at directly. 2 months passed in comfortable routine. Work, family dinners, weekend outings to the park or museum. Adrian made good on his promise to legitimize the organization. I sat in on meetings where lawyers discussed shell corporations and asset transfers, watching him dismantle decades of gray area operations and rebuild them as something legal. It was meticulous, complicated, and would take years, but he was committed. He also started involving me in strategic decisions, not the violent ones, the ones where bullets and blood were still unfortunately necessary, but the business negotiations, the territorial agreements, the long-term planning. My outsider perspective helped, he said, made him question assumptions and consider alternatives. Vincent approached me after one particularly contentious meeting, where I'd suggested a compromise nobody else had considered. He pulled me aside while Adrian was occupied, his expression serious. "I wanted to thank you again, for clearing my name, for being exactly what he needed. I didn't do anything special." "You did. You are." Vincent glanced toward Adrian. "He's different now. Better. Still dangerous when he needs to be, but leading with something other than just duty and obligation. That's you. That's what you brought him." 5 months after the attack, Adrian organized a dinner with his extended family. Uncles, cousins, senior members of the organization, their spouses and children. 23 people gathered in the mansion's formal dining room, and I met them all properly for the first time. Not as the woman who'd saved Noah. Not as Adrian's guest. As his partner. His choice. Vincent made a toast halfway through the meal, raising his glass with that easy smile I'd come to recognize as genuine. "To Lauren, who saved our boss's son and then saved the boss himself, who brought light back to a house that had been dark too long. We're honored to call you family." And the table erupted in agreement, glasses raised, and I felt the acceptance settle over me like a warm blanket. These people, this strange, dangerous, complicated family, had taken me in, made space for me. I belonged here in ways I'd never belonged anywhere after my parents died. 6 months after the attack, Adrian took me and Noah to dinner at our favorite restaurant by the lake, the same place we'd gone for that first lunch when I'd been uncertain and overwhelmed. Noah chattered about school, about the science project he was working on, completely oblivious to his father's unusual tension. After dessert, Noah reached under his chair and produced a small wrapped box, with the kind of terrible wrapping job only a child could achieve. Crooked tape, paper bunched in weird places, but tied with a careful bow. "I helped Daddy pick it," he announced proudly. "Open it, Mom." The word still caught me off guard, sent warmth spreading through my chest every time. I unwrapped the box carefully, trying to preserve his handiwork, even as the paper tore. Inside was a smaller velvet box, and my breath caught. Adrian wasn't kneeling. That wasn't his style, too controlled for grand theatrical gestures. But he'd moved his chair closer to mine, and when I looked up, his eyes held everything he'd never been good at saying out loud. Noah and I discussed this extensively. He has very strong opinions about ring design and made several excellent points about emerald versus diamond. Emerald won based on matching your eyes. A small smile played at his lips. "I'm not asking because it's the expected next step. I'm asking because 6 months ago, I almost lost you. And I've spent every day since then grateful I didn't. You're my choice, Lauren. Permanently. Irrevocably. If you'll have me." I opened the box. The ring was stunning and understated simultaneously. A square-cut emerald surrounded by small diamonds, set in white gold, elegant without being ostentatious. Perfect. Yes. The word came out thick with emotion. Yes, of course yes. Noah cheered loudly enough that other diners turned to look, grinning when they realized what was happening. Adrian slid the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably measured my finger while I slept. Obsessive attention to detail that was simultaneously frustrating and endearing. He kissed me then, gentle and sure, a promise sealed in front of witnesses. When we pulled apart, Noah was bouncing in his seat with excitement. Does this mean we're a real family now? We were already a real family. Adrian told him. This just makes it official. The weeks that followed were surreal. Planning a wedding while maintaining my paramedic shifts, while helping Noah with homework, while sitting in on meetings about real estate acquisitions and security consulting contracts. My life had become something unrecognizable from the isolated existence I'd been living 9 months ago. But it was mine. Chosen consciously, built deliberately, filled with people who mattered, and moments that counted. I'd traded loneliness for connection. Empty independence for interdependence. The woman who'd pulled a child from a burning car wouldn't recognize the woman I'd become. 7 months after the attack, on a Tuesday afternoon when I wasn't working, I found myself driving to pick up Adrian from his downtown office. He'd been transitioning to legitimate workspace, distancing the business from residential properties. Noah sat in the back seat, singing a song he'd learned in school, delightfully off-key and completely unself-conscious. I stopped at a red light and looked at my left hand on the steering wheel. The emerald caught the afternoon sun, throwing green light across the dashboard. The SUV Adrian had insisted I accept after my truck finally died sat solid and secure around us. The life I was living seemed impossible. 9 months ago, I'd been driving home from a brutal shift, taking a shortcut through an industrial district, thinking about overdue bills and endless loneliness. I'd seen flames and made a split-second decision to stop, to help, to try. That decision had changed everything. Led me here, to this moment. This family. This life I'd never imagined wanting. I'd saved Noah from fire that night, but somehow, in the process, he and Adrian had saved me from a different kind of burning. The slow smolder of isolation, of going through motions without purpose, of surviving rather than living. "Mom, what are we having for dinner?" Noah asked from the back seat. "I don't know yet, bud. We'll decide when we pick up your dad. Can we have pizza? We had pizza 3 days ago." "But pizza is the best food." I laughed, catching his eyes in the rearview mirror. "We'll discuss it as a family." The light turned green, and I pressed the accelerator gently. The city rolled past, familiar now in ways it hadn't been before. This was home. These people were home. The dangerous man in the expensive office and the tiny human singing about dinosaurs behind me. They were mine, and I was theirs. And that belonging was worth every risk, every complication, every moment of uncertainty that had brought me here. I'd chosen this life with open eyes and full knowledge of what it meant. Chosen it not despite its complications, but including them. Because the alternative was going back to safe isolation, and I couldn't imagine anything worse than that now. The ring caught light again as I turned the wheel, and I smiled. In 9 months, I'd gone from saving a child to finding a family. From existing to living. From Lauren Mitchell, paramedic who went home to an empty apartment, to Lauren Mitchell Castrovani, partner to a man transforming his world, mother to a boy who drew pictures of angels, member of a family that had welcomed me completely. It wasn't perfect. Still had edges sharp enough to cut, dangers that required constant vigilance, compromises between the life Adrian was building and the life he'd inherited. But it was real, and mine, and chosen, and that made all the difference. Noah started a new song, this one about sharks, and I joined in because that's what mothers do. Adrian would probably cringe when we picked him up, his careful control tested by our enthusiastic off-key performance. But he'd smile too, that rare, genuine expression he wore more often now. He'd kiss me hello and ruffle Noah's hair, and we'd argue good-naturedly about dinner. And it would be ordinary and extraordinary all at once. 9 months since fire and fate had intersected on a dark road. 9 months since a split-second choice had changed 3 lives irrevocably. I wouldn't take it back for anything. I wouldn't trade this beautiful, complicated, dangerous, loving reality for any amount of simple safety. Because this was home. This was family. This was exactly where I belonged.